The Connecticut Possession is the subject of the movie, The Conjuring 3. The Devil Made Me Do It, after this incident. In the summer of 1980, the Glatzel family moved into a house in Connecticut. From the outside, it looked like a normal home, quiet, ordinary, surrounded by trees and the stillness of the neighborhood. But the moment they stepped inside, their youngest son, David Glatzel, felt something was terribly wrong. David was just 11 years old, a shy, gentle boy. But almost immediately after moving in, he began to speak of terrifying visions. He told his parents that he had seen a strange, frightening figure inside the house. He described it as an old man with dark, menacing eyes, a burnt-looking face, and ragged clothes. This old man, David claimed, would threaten him. "He told me, 'I will die here,'" David whispered in fear. At first, his parents thought it was just the imagination of a child adjusting to a new home. But very soon, it became clear that something much darker was happening. David began to wake up in the middle of the night, screaming. His terrified cries echoed through the halls of the house. When his family rushed in, they sometimes found him thrashing violently on the bed, as though unseen hands were attacking him. What terrified them even more were the strange marks on his body. Scratches, bruises, and even bite marks appeared overnight, marks no one in the family could explain. Day by day, David's behavior started to change. He would stare at empty corners of the room, his eyes wide with terror. He spoke of shadowy figures surrounding him. Sometimes he claimed he saw beasts with twisted faces lurking around. His once soft, boyish voice would suddenly deepen, sounding nothing like him. At times, he shouted words in a strange, guttural tone, words in a language no one understood. The Glatzel family was horrified. Their youngest son was slipping away into something they couldn't recognize. It no longer looked like just nightmares. It felt like their boy was being hunted by something evil, something that wanted to take over him completely. That is how the nightmare began, the first signs of what would later become one of the most chilling possession cases in American history. As David's condition grew worse, the Glatzel family realized they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. Doctors couldn't explain his sudden violent fits, the scratches and bruises that appeared on his skin, or the terrifying changes in his voice. In desperation, the family turned to two people who were already well known for investigating cases of the paranormal: Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens had built a reputation across America. Ed Warren was a self-taught demonologist, while his wife Lorraine claimed to be a clairvoyant and medium. Together, they had investigated countless hauntings, possessions, and encounters with the demonic. When the Glatzel family called them, the Warrens agreed to visit the house. The moment Lorraine stepped inside, she sensed a heavy, suffocating presence. The air felt thick and oppressive, as though the house itself rejected their presence. Lorraine later described seeing a dark, shadowy figure looming near David, constantly watching him. Ed, on the other hand, began questioning the family and observing David closely. During their time with him, they witnessed events that shook even them. David would suddenly let out deep growls, his face twisting in ways unnatural for a young boy. His body would contort with unnatural strength, taking several adults to hold him down. His voice would shift from the trembling tone of a child to the commanding, harsh tone of something far older and far darker. The Warrens were convinced that David was the victim of a demonic possession, and not just one entity according to their claims. David was tormented by dozens of spirits, each vying for control over his body. The Glatzel family, terrified and overwhelmed, agreed to allow priests to perform exorcisms on David. The Catholic Church, although cautious in such matters, gave permission for several exorcism rituals to be carried out. During these sessions, David would scream, thrash, and even speak in strange languages no one around him could understand. Witnesses recalled the chilling sight of the boy's small body displaying unnatural power and resistance far beyond his years. The Warrens recorded and documented everything they knew. This case was unlike most others they had encountered. It wasn't just a haunting, it was a full-scale possession, growing more dangerous with each passing day. But what they didn't know then was that the evil surrounding David would soon extend to someone else close to the family, and lead to one of the most shocking crimes in American history. This marked the beginning of the Warrens' direct involvement, and the case was only getting darker. Once the Warrens confirmed that David was possessed, the Glatzel family sought help from the Catholic Church. After investigation, priests agreed to perform a series of exorcisms. These sessions became the most terrifying phase of the case. The priests, alongside Ed and Lorraine Warren, gathered to begin the rites. They armed themselves with holy water, crucifixes, and prayer books, knowing that they were about to face something far darker than human comprehension. As soon as the prayers began, David would react violently. His body thrashed with unnatural strength, and it often took several grown men to restrain the small boy. His voice, at times, sounded deep and guttural, completely unrecognizable. Witnesses later described chilling details. David would snarl, growl, and speak in strange, unearthly voices. He sometimes shouted words in Latin and other unknown languages. His face would twist into unnatural expressions, as though different personalities were surfacing one after another. According to the Warrens, David wasn't just possessed by a single entity. They claimed that 43 different spirits tormented him, including demons that were violent and malicious. Each time an exorcism began, it was as if a new voice, a new dark personality, revealed itself through the boy. Lorraine, with her clairvoyant ability, claimed to see these shadowy figures standing around David, taunting and laughing, waiting for their chance to fully take control. The sessions went on for hours. At one point, David allegedly levitated slightly above his bed. At other times, his small body contorted in ways that seemed physically impossible. The Warrens warned the family that the danger was escalating. The more the exorcisms continued, the more aggressive the demonic forces became. Ed Warren later said, "This was no ordinary case. This boy was a vessel for something powerful, something ancient, and something determined to destroy." For the Glatzel family, it was unbearable. Their son was suffering in front of their eyes, and they could do nothing but pray and trust the priests and the Warrens. But then, something happened that would change the course of the entire case. During one of the exorcism sessions, David's sister Debbie's boyfriend, Arne Cheyenne Johnson, was present. He couldn't bear to see the child suffering anymore. At the height of the ritual, as David screamed and convulsed, Arne shouted in anger and desperation, "Leave him alone. Take me instead." Those words, spoken in that moment, would open the door for a terrifying new chapter in the Connecticut Possession, one that would lead not just to haunting, but to bloodshed. This was the breaking point. The evil that tormented David was about to shift its focus, and soon, the first murder in American history linked to demonic possession would take place. As the exorcisms on young David continued, the Glatzel family became emotionally exhausted. Each session left David weaker, his body covered in marks, his mind slipping further into the grip of something unseen. Among the witnesses was Arne Cheyenne Johnson, the boyfriend of David's older sister, Debbie. Arne was deeply protective of the family, especially of David. He had been present during several of the exorcisms, and each time, he watched the boy thrash, scream, and plead. His anger grew. He could not accept that an innocent child was being tormented like this. He shouted at the entities during one of the rituals, yelling in frustration, "Leave the boy alone. If you want someone, take me instead." Those words would later be remembered as the turning point. According to the Warrens, that desperate challenge gave the demonic presence exactly what it wanted: permission to latch onto another soul. Arne's changes. In the days and weeks after that night, Arne began to change. At first, the signs were subtle. He would become distant, staring blankly at nothing, as if lost in a trance. Then came sudden bursts of rage, sharp, unpredictable moments when his eyes seemed darker, colder, as though he was no longer fully himself. Debbie noticed it first. She told others that Arne would sometimes act strangely, his voice deeper, his expression harsh, his behavior unnervingly different from the kind and gentle man she knew. On one occasion, he claimed to see a demonic figure staring at him from the shadows, much like David once described. Arne felt as though something followed him constantly, lurking just out of sight. The Warrens warned the Glatzel family that Arne had made a grave mistake by challenging the demon. Ed Warren later said that when Arne demanded the spirit take him instead of David, he had opened the door to something that could not easily be closed. The build-up to tragedy. Despite the warnings, Arne tried to carry on with his life. He moved into an apartment with Debbie, hoping that a change of environment would help, but the darkness seemed to follow him wherever he went. His moods became more unstable. At times, he was gentle and calm. At other times, he was overcome with sudden fury, as if a violent force had taken control of him. Debbie admitted that she feared what was happening to him, but she stayed by his side. The Warrens continued to caution that Arne was under spiritual attack, but no one could predict how it would all end. Then, in February of 1981, the nightmare reached its peak. What began as strange behavior, visions, and uncontrollable anger would soon erupt into one of the most infamous crimes in American history, a murder that Arne himself claimed was committed not by him, but by the devil inside him. This was the stage before the final horror. The entity had left the boy, and now had a new host. By early 1981, Arne Cheyenne Johnson's strange behavior had only worsened. Debbie Glatzel had grown deeply concerned. She told friends and family that something was wrong with him, that he would fall into strange trances, his mood would shift instantly, and at times, his eyes would take on a cold, unnatural expression. Despite these fears, Debbie stayed with him. She worked at a local dog kennel owned by her employer and landlord, Alan Bono, and Arne often spent time there as well. But on February 16, 1981, the darkness that had been building inside Arne finally erupted. The day of the murder. That day began like any other. Arne and Debbie were at the kennel with Alan Bono. For most of the morning, everything seemed normal. But as the day wore on, tension began to rise. Alan had been drinking, and by the afternoon, an argument broke out between him and Arne. Witnesses later recalled that the fight escalated quickly. Debbie tried to calm things down, but suddenly Arne changed. His expression shifted, his eyes looked wild, cold, detached, as though something else had taken over. In a sudden burst of violence, Arne pulled out a pocket knife and attacked Alan Bono. He stabbed him multiple times, a shocking and brutal assault that ended Bono's life. Then, almost as if waking from a dream, Arne walked away into the woods, dazed and disoriented, until police later found and arrested him. The defense: the devil made me do it. When the case went to trial, Arne made a claim that stunned America. His defense attorneys argued that he was not in control of his actions, that he had been possessed by a demonic force when he killed Alan Bono. It was the first time in U.S. history that such a defense had been attempted in a murder trial. The Warrens stood by this claim, testifying that Arne had indeed invited the demonic presence into himself during David's exorcisms, and that what happened that February day was the direct result of that possession. But the court would not allow the defense. The judge ruled that demonic possession could not be proven as a legal argument. The case was tried instead as a straightforward homicide. The verdict and sentence. In the end, the jury found Arne guilty of first-degree manslaughter. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, because of his good behavior, he served only about 5 years before being released. Arne later married Debbie, and they both maintained that what had happened was not simply a crime, but a tragedy rooted in forces beyond human understanding. Aftermath and legacy. For Ed and Lorraine Warren, the case became one of the most infamous of their careers. They described it as proof that demonic possession was real, and that it could push a person to commit violent acts. The Glatzel family never forgot what happened to David, who eventually improved after the exorcisms, though the memories of his torment lingered. And for the wider world, the story of the Connecticut Possession left behind an unsettling question: was Arne Johnson a murderer acting out of rage? Or was he truly a victim of something supernatural, something he could not control? The case became so notorious that decades later, it inspired the 2021 film, The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, ensuring that the haunting memory of these events would live on in popular culture. Even today, the phrase connected to this chilling case still echoes in the world of true crime and the paranormal. The devil made me do it. Did you enjoy the story? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Horror Dream. Want more stories like this? Subscribe to The Horror Dream, and we'll bring you more darkness, just for you. If you enjoy a little chill down your spine, stick around, like, share, and hit that subscribe button, right here on The Horror Dream. Your support keeps us going, so stay with us. Subscribe to The Horror Dream for more spine-tingling tales.